Welcome to this segment of ABA Day. We are going to be talking about how you can be advocates in the media. I am Lee Rawls. I am the Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal. I'm joined by Matt Cemento, who's the Communication Manager for our ABA Media Relations. Matt, please wave so people know.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I am also here with Amanda Robert, who is a reporter for the ABA Journal and works for our ABA Insider section. Amanda, so great to have you with us.
Hi.
And our third guest is Lawrence Coletti, who is the executive producer for Legal Talk Network, which has a whole bunch of legal podcasts, including the ABA Journal's 3 legal podcasts.
Thanks for having me.
So we're gathered here together because many lawyers certainly have issues that they're extremely passionate about. They want to make sure that the general public gets to know what some of the subtleties are when it comes to legal stories that are often missed, but you may not know how to get your message out there. So first of all, even reaching out, let's talk about that segment. Amanda and I, both working for the ABA Journal, we get pitched stories all the time. We have PR people reaching out to us to offer certain attorneys as experts. And there are some things that break through the massive amounts of email we get and other ways that just seem to fail. So Amanda, I'll start with you and just say, what are some examples of outreaches that have been effective in making sure that you know that this person has great advice on a particular topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a really good place to start is do your research. Take a look at what the reporter covers. Take a look at what the publication covers. We get pitches sometimes that don't even have anything to do with law, so we don't look at those. But one great example recently, so I'm the ABA reporter and I help with our Members Who Inspire series. And there was someone who reached out to me and said, I know you cover this. What are you looking for? What do you need? How can I help you? And that was great. Other tips, I think, subject lines are really important. So again, as the ABA reporter, if I see a subject line that says new ABA project or ABA member launching pro bono project, something along those lines, it's short, simple, it catches my attention.
Yeah, there are still people out there sending emails with signatures that just say greetings. And when you get hundreds of emails a day, as actually I'm sure our listeners here receive their own email floods every day, it's easy to overlook something if you don't have a grabber of a subject line. And actually, I'm going to turn to Matt Cemento. So Matt and the Media Relations Group are sending out their own news releases all the time. And because the ABA has such a wealth of experts on various legal topics, often you do have precisely the right person for the moment for the news event. What have you found to be effective when you're reaching out to, news outlets and trying to show them what the ABA has to offer for a story?
Well, from standpoint of media relations, I've been in media relations for 8 years. Before that, I was an editor at USA Today for 30. So I've been on both sides, probably more on the other side than not. But recently, I think the whole media landscape has definitely changed, certainly in the last 15 years, but changes year to year. I think that from the ABA's standpoint, media relations, we send out releases that deal with the ABA president or major ABA projects or major ABA meetings that the press may be interested in, and we try and send it to a focused group of media. An antitrust meeting's not going to go to a congressional reporter. Supreme Court reporters get Supreme Court information and so on. But we also have had success kind of anticipating news stories, because despite how much the news industry has changed, news still drives everything. All you have to do is look at a big story. Ukraine becomes major wall-to-wall coverage. both TV, newspapers, everywhere. And that news creates a need for reporters to get content and different angles and experts. A lot of these places have their own experts, but sometimes these experts are on or quoted so much they're looking for new experts or a new point of view. So what we've done in media relations for stories like that is, if you are an expert and you're interested in speaking to the media or getting your point out there, we will send out alerts to the media saying we have subject matter experts on whatever particular topic, legal topic might be out there that we see as important. I believe we did one for the Britney Spears conservatorship. Now, not a huge topic specifically for the ABA, although we do work in that area, but there was a great deal of interest in it given the celebrity nature of it. And there were attorneys, members who might want to talk about it. So we would send out a release, say, we have names, contact us and we'll set you up with somebody who wants to speak to you and is willing and is an expert. And I think that's a good way to kind of reach out to the media. And again, no offense to reporters, but anything that makes their job easier is gonna help. If you give them, here's an expert who can explain this to you and your audience, we'll tee it up for you.
And that's actually a great point. If you are an ABA member and you have a subject matter expertise, why not go ahead and contact media relations so that you can be on one of those lists? We've created a database, and even if there's not something in particular in the news, if you're a media expert, if you're a legal expert in a particular area, we'll put you in this list. And when people call, say, do you have somebody to talk about this? And the ABA won't talk about a lot of specific legal, certainly not specific cases or sometimes even issues, and we don't have policy on it, but we will refer media to attorneys, members who have expertise in it and can talk about it. And Amanda, let's talk about what is for a lot of people a scary term, which is expert. You and I have both talked to very accomplished attorneys or legal professionals who, when we've reached out to say, hi, we don't know much about this topic. You obviously have worked in this topic. Would you be comfortable talking to us? And often a lot of what you hear is, but I'm not the expert, or, I don't know that I would feel comfortable putting myself forward as an expert. How do you deal with that as a reporter? And what would you tell to any lawyer who feels, shy or reluctant, or, should I really put myself forward?
Yeah, I have run into that. And I think what I usually do is I just tell the person, the attorney, I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. If you want to talk on background first, we can do that. And then as we go through the questions, sometimes they decide that, I am comfortable being quoted on this, and sometimes not. And that's perfectly fine. They often give me recommendations for other people to talk to, contacts of theirs. So it's still a great way to share what your experience is with the broader audience, even if you're just helping on background.
Because I think many of the times when you see someone as the go-to for a subject, it may just be because they have that willingness to be the person quoted. And another actually helpful thing you can do, if you genuinely do feel, I care about this area, I care about this issue, but I can't actually speak to this tangential topic, but someone who can. That's a way you can be making a relationship for yourself with that publication, that journalist, that editor. If you become the person who, even if you can't speak to that specific topic, if Amanda knows, if I call this person, they're going to have 2 or 3 suggestions for other people who I could contact who are experts in that area, that's golden. And then when an opportunity comes for you to talk about something that is your area of advocacy or your area of expertise, you're still going to be the person that we're calling, and you can say, actually, I can speak to this matter. So don't think about this as necessarily a one and done. If it's, say, your local newspaper or just an entity that you know is often talking about things you care about, form a relationship and be a helpful person to those media members, and they will be contacting you.
Lee, I'm old enough to remember, and I had one, a Rolodex, and that was what you did. You know, anytime you talk to anybody, you put the contact in the Rolodex, and, you know, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So you'd always have something there. I guess we now have contact lists and email contacts lists, but it's the same concept that, you know, when you need something, and especially if you need it quickly, you may not, you know, your top 5 people may not be available. You know, you just go down the list, you go through the contacts till you get somebody who can help you.
And similar to that, if there is, say, an op-ed that you have written that you feel very passionately about, but don't necessarily know where you want to place immediately, if you've built up that relationship with a media member, say, Amanda may be able to say, oh, yeah, you know, we don't publish that particular thing, but here's an ABA entity publication that does, or this is a blog I know that talks about these subjects. So it can also be just helpful generally to have that kind of relationship going forward with the media that you consume and that's in your local community. And Lawrence, we haven't really talked yet to you, but I know all the time you're reaching out to attorneys to come and talk about specific subjects. How have people been able to sort of elevate their standing or their visibility as someone who you would reach out to say, you know, let's say there's major federal legislation coming down about cannabis regulation. All right. So you, as a podcast producer, you're looking for guests. How have people been able to elevate their profile for you to reach out to them?
I think that's a really great question. And, you know, I think it's about just getting started. And so I like what I've heard so far, you know, this concept of taking current events and then turning that into something that, you know, you can apply your expertise to. And I think it's called actually newsjacking is the official term. And so you kind of basically hijack, for lack of a better term, you know, some current event topic, but, you know, take your expertise and plug it in there. And so I recommend people blog and write. You know, I think that's a great place to start. But also, you know, as you start to develop those media connections and you get on to, say, a podcast, or, you know, maybe it's some small hit with a network or local radio station or something like that, put that online. You know, have a media page on your website out there that helps guide producers to you. And so they want to deal with known commodities. We want to deal with people that we know can speak on a topic, and somebody that's maybe got a little experience doing it. They might have some equipment, but, you know, on that media page, also list, here's the topics I feel, you know, comfortable about, and discuss those easy ways to reach you. And I always recommend people, because it's free, you know, get a Google Voice number. When that number is called, you know, it's about a media appearance. And so take that call right away. And if you can't, schedule follow-up with the reporter or whoever it is that's reaching out to you, the producer, say, hey, I'm walking to a meeting because, you know, attorneys are busy, but I'm done in about 35 minutes. Can I call you back? Generally speaking, you know, that's pretty well received, and you know, people are on timelines. And so that's what I recommend. Make yourself available, put that system in place, and show your expertise. So I think that's probably the best way. But I love what I heard about the pitch aspect of that. I think the only thing I would add to the pitch aspect of that is keep it brief. You know, I love the subject lines, but it's difficult to get through those. You know, we get bombarded with them every single day, and I would just go straight to the point. Here's what I'd like to come talk to you about. You know, just put an easy way to link back to somebody. You know, we're looking for social media presence. We're looking for past media appearances, but also we're looking to know that you understand the type of content we put out there. So I love what I heard earlier about, do you know the show that you're trying to get on? Do you know the types of topics that they talk about? Do you know the host? You know, those are things that indicate that you have some familiarity with that. That's a known commodity. And that's, you know, the comfort level that these producers and other people that are trying to, you know, get people on air are looking for. And
yeah, I would also like to emphasize knowing the publication that you're pitching to, knowing the reporter, the beat. I have a podcast, the ABA Journal's Modern Law Library, and occasionally someone will write to me and say, oh, and I love your podcast, Mr. Rawls. And I have a gender neutral name, but I I am a woman. And when I, see that, I think to myself, do you really love my show? Have you listened much? And it's the same with many reporters who, they may be pitched, and your pitch may be a good one for a certain audience. But if it's not reaching the people who actually report on that subject, you're not going to get taken up on it. It maybe, if you're fortunate, that it gets forwarded on to the person who does cover that. But with so little time in all of our days, you just can't rely on that. So again, take a look at the publication or podcast that you're reaching out to and make sure that that is the right audience. It is ABA Day, and we've been talking about areas of expertise. And there are times when your area of expertise is the reason why you care about a legislative issue. But there are also times when, the thing that you care very much about and are trying to do advocacy on behalf of may not be directly connected to your professional life. Let's talk about the war in Ukraine, for example. How can you, as an attorney, as a person who cares very much about an issue, but you aren't necessarily, say, an international law specialist, how would each of you suggest someone does that? And I'm going to start with Matt. What would you tell an ABA member who wants to do advocacy that's maybe outside of their practice area?
Well, I think given the landscape right now, the easiest, most direct, quickest, and probably best case for success is actually something that people often forget about. It's a letter to the editor. If a publication runs a story, any kind of story about Ukraine, and there's something that you read anywhere in the story, last graph, middle of the story, a throwaway, anything that strikes your attention, you can write a letter. They have to be short, maybe 200 words, ends very quickly. You got to get to the point, but publications run these every day. They even the large, we've had success placing letters to the editor in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. Even the big publications. And, certainly if you're, an attorney in Alabama, North Dakota, whatever, the local paper there would probably be even more excited to get a letter from an attorney or a prominent attorney. A larger effort would be an op-ed, which certainly in the larger publications, Times, Journal, Washington Post, they have a full stable of op-ed writers, unless you're maybe directly involved in the issue or have great stature, and that stature probably even exceeds the ABA president. We're talking US president or Bill Gates or Tom Brady. You're not going to generally get an op-ed placed in those big papers, but there are lots of papers, and certainly legislators like to see their constituents. They like to read from their constituents. They may look at an attorney from a 6-person firm writing an op-ed in the local paper, and they do read them. They have staff that cuts out everything that pertains to legislation. They see an attorney from there, who's a constituent, write an op-ed on an issue. They may take that more seriously than the ABA president.
And as an editor, I would also encourage you that if you're looking to place that op-ed, know how long op-ed pieces generally are for whatever publication you're trying to pitch. You may have, 7,000 very compelling words to say about a topic, but very few outlets can print that much text on their websites even. So definitely kind of get a feel for what length something runs.
Every publication on their website, if you just search on their website for submitting an op-ed, and almost every one of them has the rules that they want, how you submit it, what format, how many words. Same with letters to the editor. So if you're interested in doing that, just go on the site and search, and it'll give you the rules.
Now, Amanda, as a reporter covering the war in Ukraine, and obviously the ABA has been, keeping close tabs on this. We've been keeping close tabs on it. What are some of the successful ways someone has been able to elevate their concerns or make sure that we were aware of things that were being put in place to attempt to help people in Ukraine. I know that we've had some interesting interviews specifically about this, which is why I'm heading down this path, but I think it's a good example. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So recently, we were contacted by the Ukrainian Bar Association leaders who wanted to share their story, and specifically things that lawyers would be interested in, which was, great for us too. And it was ways lawyers could get involved, and also legislative and political things that they wanted to see happen. So for us, we were interested right away. But I think even if you're a lawyer in the United States, something that I would be interested in is that local angle. Like, what are you doing specifically to get involved in things going on in Ukraine? How are you advocating? Are you a law student who's involved in some pro bono project? Or actually, another reporter at the ABA Journal wrote about law students going to Ukraine on their break to help with efforts there. I think any personal story that you have that shows how you're getting involved in this bigger issue is always really interesting to us.
And Lawrence, for you guys, obviously you've got a whole host of podcasts in Legal Talk Network, and they address a whole bunch of things. But when there is an opportunity to talk about a larger issue that's impacting so many different people around the world, what are some of the ways that you've seen people reach out in a way that is successful in helping get that message out?
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult thing, is getting started. Once you start getting that footprint and that reputation for, putting out some great content like that, people find you. But I think in terms of getting started, one of the things that's really overlooked is your social media profiles. Who are you following? So if there's a particular cause that you're really interested in, there's probably several groups out there that are going to be covering it. And so I would connect with them. And that way you've got those connections laid out there. But, there's things that you can control. And one of the unsung heroes for just, self-publication is LinkedIn. It's a professional, platform. People aren't posting what they did on Saturday night, but it's your professional dressed down social media platform. But that is a great place to post. And you've got people that are in your inner circle that you can easily connect with right there, and they're going to support you. And so I would start with that. Again, I get back to kind of your own self-publication. If you're not getting out on some of these platforms that you want to, start displaying your talents, post on your own site. I did an op-ed, kind of early in COVID, encouraging employers, listen, we all want to be safe, but let's try to stay open as much as we can. Everybody needs their job. That was something I felt very strongly about, that security. Let's do what we can, and obviously safely. But, there's little messages out there, but you can put that on your blog. You can put that on your LinkedIn. You can put that on your social media channels and get out there. And a lot of people have built reputations that way. So I would just start small like that within the channels that you can control. And then at some point in time, you can build upon that.
And in addition to that, just speaking again as an editor who's approached by a lot of people all the time, that gives you a URL that you can send to an editor, to a booker, to say, this is the kind of work that I do. This is my writing style. This is the kind of opinion I've written. And that does not rely on you getting past a gatekeeper. That's something that you can, put up. I would, as always, advise everyone to know what the ethics rules are in your state, and make sure that you're following all social media guidelines when it comes to legal ethics. But honestly, there is so much opportunity now to reach people in ways that before were really unavailable to anyone who didn't have connections within major media. But to close out, if you had another piece of advice to give to a lawyer who perhaps has not been interviewed before, or is a little bit nervous about diving into this area of advocacy on a topic that they really care about, or to get their name out there as an expert for their practice area, what would you tell them to really keep in mind? I'll start with Amanda.
Yeah, I think something I was thinking about earlier, a way I often find sources is I look at conference agendas. It's a great way to show that you're speaking on this topic because you know about it, you know a lot about it. So I think that is also helpful if you've spoken at a conference recently. Add that to your email. I also find sources on Twitter when lawyers are talking about how they're about to speak at a conference. So I think that could be another helpful tidbit.
And Matt, how about you?
Well, like I said, you can come to the ABA. We can list you as a subject matter expert. I think that things like LinkedIn. I'd also say that even if you don't want to write a letter to the editor, most news organizations, you can send an email to the reporter if there's something in the story. Just make contact, explain who you are. I'm an attorney. I have opinions or expertise in this area. That you've made a contact, and it wasn't even on something that you were dealing with on time. If it's important to you and you want to do that. And as far as being interviewed, the one tip that I would say is that you're not required to answer any questions. It's not a court of law. You're not trying to win an argument. And if you don't know something or you're not comfortable answering, just don't answer it. Lawyers sometimes forget that.
Yes, absolutely true. In fact, Amanda would appreciate it if when she's asking a question, you can say, you know what, I am passionate about that issue. I can't answer that question. I don't really have the details on that squared away. So
Right.
Yes,
Right.
feel free to say that. Just one last thing that I will bring up is if you want to make sure that you're being helpful to this advocacy, but don't feel like you specifically are the right person to talk to and you know who the right people are. Again, if you can do some of that legwork for them, for example, the leaders of the Ukrainian Bar Association did not come directly to us. We were made aware of them by another source who knew that they had something to offer, something to say, and a real story to get out there, and reached out to us and said, hey, how about you speak to so-and-so and so-and-so? So always know that that's an option. And Lawrence, you deal a lot with attorneys who this may be their first time speaking at a podcast, and recording can seem very scary. So what would your last piece of advice be?
I would just say, just be yourself. Don't try to be anybody different. Just be yourself. And if you are uncomfortable and there's an opportunity to talk with an engineer, just say, hey, I'm a little nervous. And I'll tell you what, that engineer, that host, the producer will absolutely take good care of you. And so, they'll guide you through that process. But yeah, I would say just, talk within your expertise. Relax, just be yourself. Everybody just wants to hear from you and your expertise there. And so, and I also want to, if I may just add one more point, I think this is so important, for attorneys to get out there. One of the things in terms of if you want to be on a podcast or something like that, public speaking can be a little nerve-wracking for people. And one of the things I highly, highly recommend, there are tremendous opportunities at the smaller bar level where maybe you're with some closer friends. Maybe you're not on the national stage like at an American Bar Association conference, but your local bar, your local city bar, or maybe they have a section that's small. It's like right in your wheelhouse of expertise. Go do a smaller event there. Just get your feet wet. It's it's like a muscle, like everything else. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get. And you also develop your own style. So if anybody's a little hesitant there, or just needs some exposure, some up at bats, start with that. I think it's a really healthy place to start.
And
I've worked with Lawrence plenty of times. There's no way he could make anyone uncomfortable.
Agreed. And if you appear at those smaller conferences, that again is another way that Amanda Robert, when searching for experts on that particular topic, may then have a route to find you. Well, I want to thank each of my guests for joining us for this ABA Day session. And I do want to encourage anyone who has other further questions. I think that we will be posting some contact information. I personally am happy to answer any more questions you may have. And yeah, just people are interested in what you have to say. You just need to find those right people.